The stars aligned for Toxic Rain Caustic Arrow to be one of the greatest Leaguestarter in 3.21 Crucible League. Hey, I'm Cyclone. Today I want to share my variant of the Toxic Rain Caustic Arrow Pathfinder, which I think is not only going to be one of the best Leaguestarters in the upcoming league, but also the most versatile Leaguestarter of the upcoming league. To just give an example of all it can do, previous league I used the Toxic Rain Caustic Arrow Raider, and I was able to do Delirium, Simulacrum, Legion, Magic Finding, Breaches, simple bosses like Maven, Eater of Worlds, and Searing Exarch, and no issues. I even got to level 99 with the build, so it's a very powerful build, very easy to level, very easy to survive with, and that was on a Raider. Now here's the thing, Pathfinder is even better. Better survivability, and better damage. And I get to the why in a moment. But very quickly, two things I want to mention. First one being, the passive building is going to have a lot of information. It has several trees for leveling and the endgame variants. It has trees for the different skill setups. It has, not trees, it has different skill setups. It has different item sections. And it has a detailed notes section with all the information that I deemed important to mention. So you can check it out, you can read along as I'm going to talk here, and you can make your opinion of yourself about the passive building. Now, if I've missed anything, if there's anything wrong with this, and you can mention it or you can ask me in the comment section. If you have any questions, you can message me over Discord, you can message me over Discord on my server, you can go in-game and message me there, and I will going to answer the question or address the forgotten thing as quick as possible. And I'm also going to update the POB whenever something like that comes up, and any questions that I have answered I'm also going to mention down in the notes section, going to update the POB so that when you pick it up, or if you re-download it or if somebody else grabs it, they're going to have that question already answered. The second thing I want to mention is I'm going to try out a new way to present the videos, and I would appreciate any form of feedback. Did you like it? Was it too much? Was it not good enough? Would you like a mix of showing a lot of footage and highlighting items that talk about them and the passive building, or just the passive building as I make build guides? Is there any form of feedback, whatever you think about this, I would appreciate so I can further improve my videos. Now, let's take a look at the Ascendancy. Why aren't we actually a Raider? Well, Raider gives us a few interesting things. It gives us Onslaught and action speed, increased effectiveness of Onslaught, so basically action speed because Onslaught gives all action stuff. It gives us elemental avoidances, or partially half of it, and it gives us spell suppression. Now that's all great things. Spell suppression we can get on the tree though. And as for elemental avoidances, we don't really need it as early, and later stage of Pathfinder can get elemental avoidance too. So we don't also need the elemental avoidance. And what about the Onslaught? Well, the new tree with the Dance of the Blades node can now give us Onslaught. Now, it might get changed, it might get adjusted. If that is the case, we don't need it. We can also take the 4 to 5 passive cluster with totem nodes and take the node Sleepless Sentry, which gives us Onslaught when we place a totem. So now we don't really need the Raider anymore. And then some people came up with the idea, okay, a champion Toxic Rain Ballista. That's a pretty good build, it's pretty tanky. Now, it was definitely very tanky, and it still is very tanky. But what it gives us basically is Adrenaline, which is awesome, and Fortification, which is also awesome, giving out a good amount of defensive layers as well as some attack speed, cast speed, and damage from Adrenaline. Very good Ascendancy, but Adrenaline we can get on our attack mastery on the Dance of the Blades notable. So we basically already can get our Adrenaline while still being a ranger build. And the Fortification is nice survivability, but again the Pathfinder has us covered even better. And we're going to get to the Pathfinder in a moment. Just going to quickly want to talk about the attack mastery. Now, people are going to argue, I don't want to press a button every second to get Adrenaline and every 4 seconds to get Onslaught. Here's the thing. If you use a level 6 Blood and Sand with 20 quality and have all the nodes of the attack wheel, so having Dance of the Blades allocated, which you need for the mastery anyway, you're going to have a Blood and Sand with 1.056 second cooldown. And adrenaline is going to last for a second. And we don't even want to have lower than a second cooldown anyway, because we cannot gain adrenaline if we already have it. So the cooldown is perfect in this case. And the way it works on having a blunt sand with attack without moving on left click is you use it, and you're going to move as normally. It's not going to be doing any issues. It's going to instantly trigger. It's not going to affect you in any way. And when you do a left click while it is on cooldown, it's going to be used the moment it goes off cooldown if you still hold the left click while it is on while it is going off cooldown. So we hear that it's activated, we do a new left click, and the next time we hear it, we can do a new left click again. So we have the rhythm with the information we need to stay in rhythm already on it anyway. And here's the best thing. The way Toxic Rain Caustic Arrow playstyle is in maps or on bosses is, we place some totems, we move. We fire our Caustic Arrow, we move. We curse an enemy, we move. We are already using our left click several times in a few seconds anyway. So it should be no adjustments to the playstyle, and all we need to do is take that node, if it doesn't get changed that is, and then say, okay, we're going to take 10% roughly of our reservation and use it for blunt sand. So it's going to be very powerful if it doesn't get nerfed. If it gets nerfed, that's fine. If it gets changed, that's fine. It might happen. If that case, we still have Onslaught, and on maps we could use an Death Rush to get adrenaline when we kill things, and as we are a dot build, anything that dies to dot is considered killed by us, so we're good to go, and then we have adrenaline again. Easy. Now, actual Pathfinder. Why is it this strong? What does it have reworked that it makes it this powerful? There are two things, on top of having huge quality of life. The first thing is the new reworked Nature's Reprisal. And the old one gave us 30% AoE. 30% AoE was nice, it helped us getting to the 39% we need for Toxic Rain to have a perfect overlap, but it's gone, that's whatever. It also gave us 50% more damage, which was nice, we can always use damage, but it's gone. Okay, what does it get? Well, it gets 50% increased effect of Wizard. The Mastery doesn't give us Wizard anymore. The Notable Corruption got nerfed, so it only gives a part of the Wizard effect anymore. But now we have 50% Wizard on Nature's Reprisal, and on top of that, we have 25% chance to inflict Wizard for 2 seconds on hit. This is now basically freeing up a gem spot, an anointment, because we don't need corruption anymore, and a mastery point. It's very, very powerful in my opinion. It's a good trade-off for the old one. And we are Pathfinder anyway, we now don't need it to anoint it, to use Forbidden Flame and Flesh Tools anymore for it. We can directly grab it on our first lap. Going to make leveling very smoothly with it. Now on top of that, we have two huge quality of life nodes with Nature's Adrenaline and Nature's Boon, giving our magic utility flask more effectiveness, so more evasion from Jade, more armor from a granite, if needed more spell suppression from a quartz flask, and also we can increase our flask uptime with Nature's Adrenaline, even if we are not killing enemies. If we adjust our tree slightly, we can have 100% uptime on all our flasks. Now that is pretty awesome, but I left the best for last. Master Surgeon. A very powerful node. For those that have used an Enduring Flask, or well, Enduring Mana Flask, know how good Enduring is. For a few seconds while the flask is active, you can act as if you have infinite mana, because it just insta regenerates everything. So that is very awesome, but what if it's about on a life flask? Well, you might argue 50% less recovery, it can't be that much, can it? Take a look at this. A Saturated Divine Life Flask of Perenniality, or however that's pronounced, gives us 21,717 life over 7.48 seconds. That is roughly 3k regen a second by using a flask. And it lasts 7.48 seconds, we gain charges in that time back. We have permanent flask uptime. We have basically 3k regen a whole time. That is pretty awesome. Now that's why we don't need fortification anymore. That's why we don't need early elemental immunity anymore. Because, oh, I'm ignited. Oh no, I'm losing a bit of health. Let me just quickly regenerate it. Bleed is not going to be an issue. Ignite is not going to be an issue. Elements on the ground not going to be an issue. We're going to have a wonderful time early with this flask. Now, of course, this is a perfect one. If you roll it yourself, you're likely not going to end up with a perfect one, so you're maybe only going to have 2k regen or 19k. It's still going to be a lot of regen. And now, let me introduce you Petrified Blood. We already established the Ascendency Pathfinder is very strong now, but Petrified Blood makes this Life Flask thing even more insane. If at any point we are going to get a hit that gets us below full life, for the damage we take while half-life, we're going to take 40% over that directly away, and 80% of that 40% we're going to take over the next 4 seconds. So if we get a few tiny hits in, we're going to instantly regenerate that. If we take a big hit in, we're going to take a portion of it, we're going to instantly regenerate it, because we have like 4.5k health, and then 3k regen, insta regeneration basically. And for the rest of the damage that then still is from a big hit, we're going to take over the next 4 seconds. And that means we can counter regen it as soon as it applies to us, being basically at full life the whole time. Our life bars might look like it's jumping up and down, but we're going to be totally fine at full life all the time. It's going to be a very nice effective HP. Very tanky, because even before that, even without this, the Raider version I played this league, or well, last league for you now watching this, I got to level 99 without any issues. I ran legions and didn't die. I looted legions while still clearing the legion, I didn't die. I was able to run daily maps, I didn't die. It's very tanky, but this makes it even more insanely tanky. It's so powerful. Very amazing ascendancy. Alright, so we've established why we want this ascendancy and why it's so good. We have now an amazing defensive layer. Now there are a few more things I need to mention for the different variants of the build. The first one being is to fit our Petrified Blood, to fit our Blood and Sand on top of the auras we usually want, like Malevolence, Grace and Haste. We need some adjustments. We need to use a 3 Passive Reservation Cluster with a 50% reservation 50% reservation aura having a notable there. For example, modifying aspect for Malevolence. Also giving us a nice chaos resistance. With this cluster and then charisma used on the tree, we have exactly enough reservation to fit all the auras we need, and then we can use a replica Sorrow of the Divine. Because we're going to have uptime on our flask on all time, with this thing I'm going to mention in a moment, we now can use this flask, and with the life flask have all the ES all the time, basically infinite mana, and can use it to place all the totems, use the Divine Blessing. For example, we can use the Divine Haste while having Malevolence and Grace up all the time, or use Grace and Haste all the time and have a temporary Malevolence when needed. It's going to be very good to have. So we have 350% auras, Blood and Sand for the dancing around with the Onslaught and the Adrenaline, and then we have Petrified Blood for survivability. Now the next thing we do need is a 4 to 5 passive duration cluster with two of the 3 nodes. Root for Potency, Spike Concoction, and Fasting. If we have any of these 3 nodes and use the following suffixes on our flask, which is following prefixes on our flask, which is either brewers or better, so having 24 or more reduced charges per used, and using a bottomless and having 35% increased charge recovery or better recovery on our flask, we're going to have 100% uptime on average on the flask. Now it should technically be 100% uptime all the time, because we are just going to be balanced around having the charge per seconds, the charge generation adding up with the duration, and the recovery should end up to have a perfect uptime on our flask all the time, and solving the issues of having flask downtime, especially good on bosses. Now on a mapping version, we don't need the flask duration cluster because we are killing enemies. We're going to have that helping us with our flask uptime. But of course, we can still use it, or we can just use it when we are bossing. Speaking about bossing, let's talk a bit about how we do our damage. We can use Toxic Rain totems for our single target damage. Now, there is a new helmet that got introduced last league and got a lot of attention recently, which is Wilma's Requital. This helm is very powerful for us, converting our cast speed, or well, increases in reduction to cast speed, to attack speed. So haste, which now gives us attack speed, and cast speed now gives us double the attack speed instead, and gives us movement speed still. Or the unique ring time class, which we can use if our stats and resistances are already covered on other gear. We can get cast speed, attack speed, and skill effect duration, which all great stats because the cast speed is now basically attack speed. It's going to have a very good damage increases for our Toxic Rain totems. We can't do damage ourselves anymore, so we are going to solve that by using Mirage Archer on the Caustic Arrow, and using that as utility to apply the Wizard stacks, apply Culling Strike, and just have the Mirage Archer fire all the time at the enemies. This helm might be expensive. It got a lot of attention. Toxic Rain is going to be a very popular starter in the next league, so it could be expensive. If that's the case, you don't exactly need the helmet. You need the helmet if you want to have an easy time with bosses. If you don't want the helmet, or if you don't want to go for bossing, if you can have a friend who kills your bosses, or you can get a boss killing service, you don't need it, you can skip the helmet and you can just use another helmet instead, solving the issue with the price of this. Alright, so we have that covered, we have our damage covered. Now there are just going to be a few more items I want to talk about for the different variants of the build. One of that being the Gull. The Gull is a great alternative to the Wilma's Requital. We can use it for mapping, getting shrines. Almost all the shrines have a great effect on us. We can get more recovery, more defenses, more elemental resistances, which gives us, as far as I know, overcapped resistances. And we can get, what's the word of it? Oh yeah, right, the speed shrine. Very fast. So on top of being already a very fast build with Onslaught, with a more effective Quicksilver, we can now get speed shrines, and we can make it even more insane by using a Queen of the Forest. Queen of the Forest and having 45k evasion or more, going to give us another 75% in movement speed. Well, it takes 25 away, giving 75, being basically 50% more movement speed. And then using a 3-step assault boots to get to that evasion level, as well as getting a nice amount of movement speed on the boots and some life. We now have a potentially 200 or more movement speed. That's going to make us a very fast mapper with having access to Caustic Arrow and access to Toxic Rain totems. We place them, we fire Caustic Arrow, we continue past. And if we're not using the Wilma's Requital, we can even use Arrow Nova on the Caustic Arrow, having huge amounts of clear on top of all that. Now, once you have your initial setup, you're set up for farming early maps, you have enough done with the totems, and you have farmed up enough currency to craft you something that I call GG Bow, you can transition into the late game version of the build. The GG Bow very quickly. It's a bow that's going to have damage over time, and if it's a rare bow that just has damage over time multiplier, we can deterministically make the bow every time. You're going to craft can have up to 3 crafted modifiers and cannot roll attack mods. Then you're going to use an Exalted Orb to guarantee level 1 of socketed gems and a +2, that's one step after. And we're going to use a Hunter's Exalted Orb to guarantee any tier of increased chaos damage over time. Then we can remove crafted modifiers, recraft 3 crafted modifiers, then +2 to the level of socketed gems now, and chaos damage over time multiplier. Now we have a bow that we can use for all the way until we don't play the build anymore. It's going to carry us all the way. We can add an Empower to Caustic Arrow. It's going to be very powerful. And then we can decide to go magic finding. And now magic finding, there's something that I want to mention. There is Divination's Distillate. Now either we're going to have a magic finder that has insane amounts of recovery on top of having magic find gear, so a huge amount of effective HP, which is something that magic finding usually lacks. So now we have huge amount of EHP, we are good to go, and we don't die as much while magic finding. Or we're going to have a little bit less effective effective health points, but we're going to have a Divination's Distillate up all the time. The way hybrid flasks work, as far as I know, as long as your life isn't full, or you have now an enduring life flask, it doesn't get removed. So we get the increased rarity, the increased quantity, and all elemental resistances from this flask, meaning we shouldn't be needing a purity of elements anymore for a Magic Find build. So we can instead use a defensive aura or haste for having even faster, even better build. It's going to make this very nice feeling either way. If it works or if it doesn't work, we now have a very good survivability character that can still do magic finding, making me very excited to try out magic finding in the upcoming league. And now, finally, the last thing I want to mention is the very endgame everything version of the build. Version that's going to be able to run simulacrums, going to run high level delirium, high percentage delirium, is going to be very powerful, and it's going to be elemental immune. So how are we going to get the elemental immune, and how are we going to make this powerful? There's going to be two more uniques we need. One for having one step is a devouring diadem. We want that helmet even though it's going to be more expensive upcoming league and more rare. We still want it for the endgame version, because it allows us to replace Battlefied Blood with Determination. That means we have now Grace, Determination, Malevolence, and a temporary Haste Aura, being very powerful, being just very powerful defensive layer and still being very fast and having good amount of damage. On top of that, it gives us permanent Eldritch Battery. This means we don't need the replica Sorrow of the Divine anymore, and can instead choose a different flask setup. We can use 4 flagellant flasks, so getting 3 charges whenever you are hit by an enemy, and then use Progenesis. And on top of all that, we can use the Flask Mastery to recover 4% life when we use a flask, which used to be on Master Surgeon and now is on the Mastery. So we replace Master Surgeon. Okay, no, sorry, one step ahead. I'm talking too much, I think. We have Master Alchemist, removing ailments when we use a flask. We don't need Master Surgeon anymore because the mastery, because the recovery is now in a mastery. We have Master Alchemist, then we have the Flask Mastery recovering life. So whenever we use a flask, we have 4% life gained, and we remove elemental ailments, basically being elemental ailment immunity. Then we're getting flask charges when we are hit, and Progenesis is now giving us reduced damage taken, but because delaying the damage by 25% of the damage for 4 seconds, like Petrified Blood did. So the damage we then take over the few seconds, we can counter heal by using the flask because we're getting hit, because we're killing stuff, the flask getting used again, we cover more life. It's going to be a constant loop of getting life, losing life, and it's going to jump around like before, but still giving us a very effective health pool. Overall, this build is going to be very tanky, very fast, having good clear, good single target damage, and able of doing most content. I do apologize, I forgot to mention the leveling. We got a huge change in the leveling section. Usually we go with Caustic Arrow, Toxic Rain all the way, but now we can actually use Caustic Arrow, Snipe, Puncture for the early leveling, and then in Act 3 swapping to Toxic Rain once we get the Despair Support Gem, which is also removing gem pressure, removing socket pressure, not needing to buy as many gems, and also going to still be very powerful. Snipe is something that Bleed Bow builds used in the late game to destroy bosses, to have a lot of damage very quickly. So it's going to be a very good multiplier. So we can use Snipe and Pierce with something like Chance to Bleed to have just a very powerful single target damage, and for a clear Caustic Arrow with Pierce and then Void Manipulation, Efficiency, Mirage Archer, and maybe even Momentum, depending on how that is worded, is going to carry you through the clearing section of the game. So going to be a very powerful early leveling, and after that you can get Toxic Rain and the Toxic Rain Totem and just clear the rest of the game until you get into the late game, where you then get your proper totem setups and using Caustic Arrow as utility. Alright, now back to the main video. Overall, I think Toxic Rain Caustic Arrow will be a very good league starter that is either going to enable you to save enough currency to upgrade or change into a different build that you then going to play until the rest of the league, or until you then transition into the next build afterwards, or it's going to be a very good build to min-max in and try to challenge all content that the game has to offer. All that being said, hopefully this video wasn't too long and still kept fairly interesting. And if you have any questions remaining, feel free to ask me down in the comment section or over on Discord or in-game, and I will try to answer as quickly as possible. Have a wonderful day and good luck in the League launch.